Appley. I'm the Director of Development Services, and I want to thank you for coming out today. We're going to start on time because you came on time. Before we go further, I'd like to recognize our District Commissioner, Commissioner Edwards, who's joining us today. I also have with me, Pastor David, who's here. And then my staff, of course, I have my planner, David Lane, and Ayanda Ramos, and of course we have our consulting team. We have Glenn Coyne, many of you have seen him before. I know we have a Hispanic Kingsley with that. Keenan. But again, thank you for coming out today. We've done a few of these presentations already, and we're now in District 1. I think we may have one left, so if you know anyone who hasn't made it out as yet, just remind them we're going to post when that is going to be scheduled. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our consultant team right now so that we stay on time. And they're going to go through the process of how this is going to work tonight.
Thank you, Shana, and thanks for the space. It's great to be here. We were here for a public meeting for the comp plan update about 2 years ago, and you somehow remembered me, so that's awesome. But thanks for letting us use the room. If y'all can't see that, you can maybe move to the middle if it's not bright enough. We tried to brighten it up, but as Shana said, what we're going to really do tonight is just talk a little bit about what we're doing with the update to the Unified Development Ordinance, who's involved in the process, and what it's going to look like as we go through this, and then we'll give you a project schedule, and then we'll have time for discussion with you, and then we have a few exercises we're going to ask you to help us with before we leave. So this whole process, again, the county is in charge. This is a project that the county asked for consultants to propose on, and since we did the comprehensive plan, our company GMC last year, 2 years ago, we really wanted to be involved with this project if we could. So we sought out Kendi Keast. They're a company that is based in Texas. They've done about 250 code updates over the last 20 years throughout the country. This is what they do. They're really, really good at it. So they're the lead consultant for this. They've asked us to help them with public involvement and with tying it to the comprehensive plan. There's also an attorney on the group, Paul Schwab Group, and I want to assure you that the county attorney will review everything we do before it gets sent to the Board of Commissioners for adoption. But even before it gets to the county attorney, we have somebody on our team who will make sure that it's consistent with Georgia law and that we're not proposing something that we can't defend against. So again, at the very top of the list is the county. That it will anything that's done in this process will go through the staff, it will go through the Planning Commission, and it will go to the Board of Commissioners. So there's several steps that have to happen before anything changes. So I want to assure you of that. Shana is the project manager on the county side, so all of the work that we do will funnel through her, and we'll communicate with her. The three folks you see on the screen are the staff at Kendi Keast. Brett is one of the principals, which is why he gets his name in the title. And then the project manager for this is Brian Mabry. You will see him at future public meetings as well as us, but he's the one that's going to be here on the ground. And then Rachel is one of their assistant project managers, and she's in Florida and has a lot of experience in Georgia too. So these are the folks you'll see at future meetings from Kendi Keast. We are GMC, Goodwin Mills Kaywood, and again, my name is Glenn Coyne. I've been with the company about 4 years. I've been doing planning for a lot longer than that, 30-some years. Kalanis Johnson, who some of you know, he's been at some of our other meetings. He had a conflict tonight, so we have Keelan Millie's left here. She's a planner who's been with us a little over a year and a half, and has a lot of experience with zoning as well. So as we break up and talk in the groups and the exercises later, feel free to ask us questions. But for those of you that don't know, Goodwin Mills Kaywood, we do architecture, engineering, planning. And right now we're very involved in disaster recovery, and we have a team on the ground over in Augusta where my office is, because if you've heard, Augusta's in pretty bad shape right now. So we have a lot of people there dealing with cleanup and working on getting Augusta back up and running. So again, continuing about who is involved, we have our project team, which we just talked about, the Kendi Keast group, our group, and then the county staff. And so we meet regularly, quite often with that team to make sure we're communicating. We also have focus groups and stakeholder interviews. We've talked to folks already. Brian Mabry, who you saw his picture, and Rachel came and did a bunch of meetings about 2 weeks ago, just to get input from those stakeholders and focus group members. And then in the public, this is where you all come in. We're having these open house meetings at the beginning to figure out what some of the issues are with the ordinances and the codes. But we'll have more as we go through. Once we have some recommendations, once we have some things to present, we'll have a whole other series of open houses. And then before anything can change, the zoning ordinance and the Unified Development Code is a law, it's a legal document. In order for the Board of Commissioners to change it, they have to hold formal public hearings. So we can have all kinds of public meetings and open houses and group meetings and things like that, but before the law requires you to have public hearings before you change the law. So that's, rest assured that those will be advertised just like a rezoning hearing is done as we get closer to the end of the process, which I'll talk about later. Also, we have a place on the county website where updates will be posted as they become available. And then we will appear before the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners with periodic updates as we go through the process. So back again to the comprehensive plan. Again, we help the county with that. This is something that's done every 5 years. It began in Georgia back in 1989 when the state said every county and every city needed to have a comprehensive plan. And that's when Georgia was going through some tremendous growth, and we've continued that growth since that time. So the latest update was done again, a 5-year update, and it was adopted on June 27th of 2023, and we had a series of public meetings just like this throughout the county. We also had an online survey, and we had lots of other public input for that. But that really resulted in what we've been talking about in these meetings are these character areas. And you see the map up above. It's not strictly a parcel by parcel land use map, but it's a map that talks about what the character of the county should look like 20 years from now. So we've identified areas that are more rural, with lower density development, large lots in the green. We've got areas in yellow that are already very highly developed, and we call those existing suburban neighborhoods. And then in the salmon color, those are areas we've identified as emerging suburban development. So it's not there yet, but the next wave over the next 20 years, we think we'll see some growth in those areas. And then you'll notice a lot of corridors and a lot of nodes in green and red that are future neighborhood centers and community centers that we think at some of the main crossroads would be places for neighborhood scale office and retail and things like that. So there's a lot more behind this map than what it just summarizes, and we've had a lot of conversation in our previous meetings about this map. But this is the guide. This is what the county uses to consider changes to zoning and changes to development, but it's just a guide. The zoning map and the zoning regulations, which we're updating now, are the law. That's the rules that you have to follow. So the two work together. And one way to really kind of, Kendi Keys did this slide, and at first I thought it was corny, but it's grown on me. The one way to think about the plan is, it's the menu. When you walk into the restaurant and look at a menu, and there's a list of what you can order. Sometimes there's pictures, sometimes there's a description, but there's not a lot of detail about it. You know, it's like, they tell you what the main things you're gonna get on the dish are, but it's not really detailed. Now, back in the kitchen, they've got a recipe, and that recipe is very detailed. Exactly how much of whichever ingredient goes into it, and it's very prescriptive. It's what they have to do to make that dish the way it's supposed to be that the people are expecting on the other side. So the plan is the guide, the ordinance is the recipe, and that's how it all works together, or it's supposed to work together. So as soon as the plan was adopted, the first thing the county wanted to do was address the codes to help implement that plan. So that's how these things are supposed to work together. And I think why it's really interesting that we're involved and be able to do and work on both. So backing up again to 2020, the county in their wisdom said, okay, we've got the zoning ordinance, we've got land development regulations, subdivision regulations, all that type of stuff. And then we have these very detailed water resource ordinances. And all of those things, if somebody wants to come into the county and develop, they have to consult each of these things separately, and it's kind of confusing. So they decided to already put that together as one code, which they call Unified Development Ordinance, UDO. So when you hear those letters, that's what that means. It's the zoning, it's the land development regulations, and the water resource ordinance. So all of those things are factors. You have to have water and sewer to do any kind of dense development, so that's important. The river basins are very important with overlays about what type of density you can develop, that's important. So again, these three things are already put together in 2020, but the job now is to take a look at that, since it's been in place for 4 years. Are there things in there that are duplicates, or are there things that conflict with each other, or some things that are inconsistent? Every community has that. When you put that many ordinances together, you can do the best job in the world, but there's just going to be some things that might be inconsistent. So one of the things we're doing is taking a look at that and looking for inconsistencies and conflicts. The other thing is, since 2020 and even going farther back, there's been a lot of really interesting things that have come out in the development field for what we call best practices. Are there some of those things that we could bring to the table to Newton County to consider and say, you know what, we've got that same issue. Maybe if we tried this, get that in our code, that would help. Another issue is there's always new court rulings, there's always new state laws being passed. We want to make sure those are incorporated into the code so that we're not in conflict with a recent court ruling on, say, signage, or there was a big case about 5 years ago dealing with religious freedom and all that kind of stuff. RLUIPA, it's called, and there's lots of things in the code that we want to make sure we're good with that. There's stormwater codes that are changing every year that we want to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date stormwater regulations. So just some examples of the type of things we want to review. And then the organization of it, user-friendly. There's folks who don't have to use a zoning ordinance every day or every week, every month. But they should be able to go into that code and figure out what they need to learn about quickly. You shouldn't have to dig through pages and pages and pages to find what you need. So our goal is to put together something that makes sense, it's logical, and you don't need an advanced degree to figure it out. So that's how we're approaching this. And kind of most importantly is implement the plan. So you've gone to a lot of trouble to update the comprehensive plan, and the codes are one very important way to implement that. So what we're doing is preparing this updated code. Hopefully it's going to be easier to use and better organized. We intend to use a lot of graphics and a lot of drawings and a lot of visuals, because we can spend 3 pages trying to describe what we mean, or we can show you a picture of it, and it's a lot easier to understand. So that's the approach that Kendi Keys takes, and something we really like. I'll show you in a minute an example. And then also administrative procedures. Shana and her staff, all day, every day, deal with cases that come in, with questions that come in, and how that's set up and what that process is. If I submit an application, how long do I have to wait to get an answer? Well, we should establish within 30 days, within 45 days, within whatever those timeframes are, those should be in the code, so that no pressure, but that people have expectations as to what their turnaround time is going to be. You can't just say when I get to it. That's not acceptable. And then public hearings. Anytime there's a change to zoning, you have to go through a public hearing, and there's procedures to do that. And then 3 is why we're here tonight. What are the key issues? What are some of the things that those of you that live here and have dealt with the development that's happening in Newton County, what are some of the issues that we need to make sure we know about? We have some that we've heard about already, and we're going to ask you to give us some more. This is why we're here tonight. So this is an example of maybe one of the graphics that it may not be used in this code. It's just from a different one, but it's an idea of up there on the upper left, just to explain some of the words that are used in the code and explain what would result if you do implement the zoning code. So, and then we have examples, and we'll show pictures of what we mean. And again, this comes from like a mixed use zoning, where you try to describe to folks something happening on the first floor, something different on the second and third floors, and parking in the rear. So there's lots of concepts, but again, I take page after page after page, I can just show you the page, and it's a lot easier. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm blocking it, you know, but to implement it, make it as simple as possible. And again, I assure you that Kennedy Keeps or us, we do not have a zoning ordinance sitting in the drawer that we're going to bring here to Newton County and say, here's your new ordinance. It doesn't work that way. We're starting with what you have. We're going to make changes to it, and then there'll be a product at the end. So it is not one size fits all. We've had some folks at our meetings say, well, how many pages is it going to be? Well, I don't know how many pages it's going to be because we're not there yet. But it's a unique process for Newton County. So again, to repeat some of the objectives that we're looking at, some places throughout the county, we've heard through the planning process and even in our meetings here for the code, that there's a lot of talk about lot sizes. In certain parts of the county, we should have a minimum of 5 acres. In certain parts, we're too full. We need to control development. But we have to figure out a way that if people want to move to Newton County, there's a way for them to do that. One of the big discussions we've had is missing middle, and I know those of you in other meetings have heard me talk about this, but it's a problem nationwide where there's lots of houses available at the top end. People who can afford, you know, $800,000 and $1 million, lots of those being built, and there's lots of apartments being built, lots of rental. But there's not a lot in the middle for folks who just want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house or something a little smaller or a condo or whatever. And that's where the incomes are, in the middle. And so one of the things that this code can do is figure out where is it appropriate in the county, what does it look like, what does the design look like, where should we allow it, should we think about allowing it? But it's just a big topic right now throughout the country and certainly here as well. Then we want to talk about how development happens greenfield. That means areas that are rural that have no development on them. How do we control development in those areas? Infill is where we have development, and there might be a few lots available that we need to literally fill in. And so what does that look like? Do we want to build exactly what was built next door 20 years ago, or do we want something that fits today's architecture and today's marketplace? And then redevelopment. Are there parts of Newton County that are obsolete that need to be redeveloped? Are there vacant commercial strips that nobody wants to put stores in, but that's prime property to do something else with? So there might be a way to encourage redevelopment and get those spaces used. And then connectivity and walkability, trails, all of that, sidewalks is an issue. We've had people rank those very highly in our previous meetings. That may not be the case here, but how you get around the community and how you deal with connecting neighborhoods and connecting neighborhoods to retail or shopping or restaurants is something. And then open spaces and environmental resources. We spent a lot of time on the character area map, identifying where the river corridors are, where the green spaces are, where future parks are supposed to be. We were more successful in some areas of the county than others, I admit. It's going to be tough to find some recreation areas in certain parts of the county, but we established a way to figure that out. But the idea is, if it's environmentally sensitive, it's a creek, a river, we've got to keep development out of there. We've got to be very careful about that going forward, because 20 years from now, we're going to be in a real bad place if we've taken away all our natural resources. And then I talked a little bit about best practices and trends. I don't want to bring a bunch of stuff from California to Newton County. That's not what this is about. But if there's something that's been done in another part of the country that might work, we certainly want to put it on the table as a possible idea for the county. Again, we talk about what we're going to do. I think it's also important to tell you what we're not going to do. This is not something that's talking about property taxes. It's not something that's talking about valuation. That's a whole other process. We're also not talking about annexation during this. That's a process between the cities and the county that happens. Capital improvement program, that's your water, sewer, roads, all of your improvements, stormwater, drainage. The engineering folks, the public works folks, they manage all of that. And nothing here in the update of the codes is going to impact that. Same with the building codes, construction standards. Those are set outside of this process. And then property maintenance and nuisance. So those are the things we're not going to do during the UDO. So I promised to show you the schedule. We're just getting started. I want to emphasize that. This is the beginning of the process. We are deep into looking at what the current codes are, what they say, where the issues are, how does it relate to the plan, and then we're just in that first phase of public outreach, so a few more. So we're, again, at the very beginning, there'll be more public meetings down the road, but our schedule has this be in October of next year, October 25. And I know that this is critically important because there's a 2-year moratorium currently in place. That moratorium ends either at the end of 2 years or when this process is done. So we don't want to be the ones to hold that up and make it go 2 years. We're doing everything we can to get the ordinances ready to go for adoption by October of next year. Now, things could change in the schedule and the amount of reviews and the amount of meetings and things we have to go through that might extend that. But we've got it, our Kennedy Keys and us working together with Shana have a calendar that is worked out that will have this ready to go by October of next year. So that's our plan going forward. So tonight, as we let you ask us some questions, as we let you go to these stations that we have set up and give us some feedback, we wanted to think about a couple things before I explain exactly what we're going to do. But as I kind of alluded to, we'd love to hear from you about what you think is working in the county and what is not working in the county with development. You probably have some ideas, and some of you may have some real strong ideas, but we want to make sure to get those down on paper, whatever comment form you choose to use. But we want to find out what you think about the current regulations and how they're working. If you have ideas for changes, we want to hear those. And then if you've moved here from somewhere else, or you have family that lives in another part of the country, another part of the state, and you've been there and you said, you know, I really like what they've done in this part of this community, we do that in Newton County. Let us know that. Whether it's a mixed-use development, whether it's a waterfront development, whether it's something you may not be able to exactly do here, but some of those components we may be able to bring into the code and kind of bringing us something that you've seen somewhere else work sometimes helps us turn that into code here. And then on the maps, we're going to ask you to let us know, well, we're going to ask you to tell us which areas you like and which areas need improvement, but we'd also like to know, you know, which areas of the county do you think we really need to pay attention to think about different zoning or different land development regulations, and then which areas of the county do we need to be careful about protecting and making sure that it stays the way it is. And that could be environmental, that could be rural, whatever the issue is. We'd love for you to tell us that. So again, 2 things. One, we have a map exercise over here in this corner, and it's pretty simple. We have some blue dots and we have some yellow dots. And the blue are to identify your favorite places in the county, and the yellow dots are to tell us areas that need improvement. And if you'd like, you can draw a Post-it note and put more information, but each of those dots have a number on them. And I'd love to ask you to make note of that number on the sheet of paper over there. So if it's a blue dot and it has number 27 on it, write that down and tell us why you put that dot there. It can be 3 or 4 words, just a quick note as to why that's one of your favorite places. Or if you put yellow dot number, whatever, tell us that number and why you think that area needs improvement. That'll help us to take that information. The second one is we have a series of 3 boards. And what we did there is we took some of the issues that were identified from the comprehensive plan process that related to land use and zoning and development. Because there were lots of things in that complex. We talk about transportation and housing and parks and recreation and utilities and lots of other things. But the ones that dealt with land development, we've put on 2 boards. And they're split into residential, commercial, open space, that type of thing. And what we really like you to do there is this time we have blue dots and green dots. And the blue dots is 1 vote, and the green dots are 5 votes. So if you're really passionate about something, we want you to put a green dot there. If it's something it's pretty important to you, put a blue dot. And if it's not important, don't put anything. And then what we'll do at the end of the night is we'll be able to see a trend of what people think are the most important issues. Again, with the Post-it notes, if you'd like to give us some information, feel free to write that in. And the third poster is completely empty. That's one where you can write in whatever you want. And last night, I tell you, I got that home and scanned last night's meeting, and we have some great stuff that we got last night. We have folks that wrote an idea and 3 bullets under it, and then it was just really, really well done. So no pressure, but whatever kind of information you can give us about any recommendations we didn't think about or talk about, make sure you get it on there, and we'll capture each and every one of those as we go forward. And then if none of these strike your fancy, we have a comment form. Feel free to write down on that comment form anything you'd like. Leave it with us tonight, or you can send it to Shana tomorrow or the next day via her email, which is at the bottom of the form, and we'll collect those and get that information from you as well. So the idea is, if you have a thought or an idea or an issue or a problem or something that you want us to know about, there's plenty of ways for you to tell us what that is, and we want to make sure we capture that. So again, I went through that pretty quickly, but I'm happy to go back to any of those and get into more detail. But if you have specific questions before we go into the exercises, Shana and I are happy to try to answer them. But again, we want to thank you for being here. It shows interest in this project. It is the beginning. There will be more public meetings. And the way that Kennedy Keys does this is they kind of go section by section. So they'll have a group of regulations that they'll address first, bring those out to folks, because there's a lot here. So they try to break it into, I think modules they call them, but just sections of code that we can digest as we go through, and then the whole thing gets put together in the end. So I'll stop talking, and if anybody has questions, we'll try to answer.
I got one. Always got one.
Absolutely.
Always got one. We all know what's on 99.9% of the citizens of Newton County this week. Is there anything we can put into our zoning to give us teeth to fight back against the state if the state wants to come in and put I'll say a biolab in the middle of where it doesn't need to be? Because the state can come in and just ignore our zoning all completely. Is there anything we can put in there to give us teeth to somewhat fight back?
Put me in a tough position. Yes, but they still can.
They can still do it.
Yeah, let me give you another example. Let's not talk too local. Let's talk. We did the comprehensive plan for Bryan County, and they had areas identified as industrial. They thought it was going to be far out in the future, and then Hyundai came, and it changed the whole world. It changed not only Bryan County, but the surrounding 75-mile radius overnight. And they're building. That thing's going to be open and kicking out cars in January. If you've driven down I-16, it looks like Hartsfield Airport. It's that big. It's huge. They weren't prepared for it. But that's where the state economic development folks said this is where we need to put it. Sure, they had a zone for industrial, but not that scale of industrial. Nobody can anticipate that. So I know you've had a similar situation here in the adjoining county, but the long story short is you can put all kinds of regulations and zoning districts and controls on it. But if something like that comes in and there's a statewide economic development effort, they're going to meet with your elected officials and they're going to talk through it. But I can't say exactly, but there's still going to be environmental rules that have to be followed. There still has to be traffic and transportation, utilities and infrastructure that has to be considered. So if you have all of those things in place beforehand, it gives you a lot more ability to react to something like that. Is that?
Yeah.
I can't go too much farther, but
you did a good job in answering that.
Yes, sir.
We have several areas in the county that have overlays. So how do the UDO and overlays, like what trumps what and which is more helpful to us?
We have our base zonings, those are all the areas outside of the overlays, and then we have the overlays on top of that. So the overlays will take precedence, they do right now. So we have to use, what regulations are in there. If there is something that is not in the overlay, it will default back to the zoning. So let's pick something simple. Let's say landscaping. It's in the overlay, but let's say there wasn't any requirements for landscaping in Salem overlay or in the Brickstone overlay. Then it will default back to what the base zoning says about landscaping. So that's how those kind of work. The overlays always trump the base zoning, but they're only in certain sections of the county.
And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but one scenario might be that we simplify that. Instead of having a base zoning and an overlay, if there's an area that is covered by both and we can just have one district that handles it, that would be an area that would simplify the code. So you just have one place and say, what can I do here? What are the rules that apply to this property? So I don't know that that change will be made, but that's one that could be on the table for, that's an example of how we might be able to simplify it.
But don't the voters, don't they vote on the overlays? Or no?
No.
No.
I think the conflicts have to be identified, at a minimum.
The conflict between zoning and.
Yes.
Yes.
They have to be identified, and then we have to have those discussions at a minimum, right? Even when the overlay supersedes the zoning. So we have to be aware of those conflicts so that potential developments are aware and we're prepared for that discussion.
But the process is, the applicant applies for a change in zoning. It goes to a public hearing at the planning commission. They recommend to the board of commissioners, and they are the ones that vote on changing the zone. So that's the process that it goes through. So there's not a referendum on a change of zone.
Okay.
And that is one of the cases we're trying to work on, because we have identified areas in the ordinance where there are conflicts. And they say one thing, one place, then another part will conflict that. So
Yeah.
things like that we're trying to address, this go around.
Yeah.
To make it a smoother transition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, we got here late because we went to the wrong East Bridge, so you may have already addressed some of this. But
That's okay.
tell me about the future land use, map plan, will this change any of that? A future land use plan that gets,
No.
developed every 4 or 5 years?
No. Now, that will be updated in 5 years. And now, if something drastic were to change in the county, they can revisit that map anytime, but the plan is not to change that. That's still the guide, and as we were saying, that's really not only for now, but for 20 years from now. So each time you update that plan, you're pushing it out another 20 years.
And it's what it is now for another 5 years.
But I think it's also important to know, that's just a guide, okay? The zoning ordinance and the things we're talking about become law. So what we're doing is and it's a little more important in terms of being a legal document, UDO.
I realize it's not a legal document.
Yeah, so the plan is still a guide, and there's nothing on the table right now to change that. Yeah, that's a good question.
Can we go ahead and start boards while we're asking questions?
So I think we're good. We're here. If you want to ask us a question one-on-one, we're happy to. Ken, thanks for coming. Thanks for everybody sticking
Have a